Jonathan Bennett was the epitome of American success, a self-made millionaire whose name had become synonymous with luxury and opulence. As the owner of a prestigious hotel chain that spanned the United States, Jonathan had everything money could buy: lavish mansions, expensive cars, and a life of unimaginable privilege. Yet, behind the glittering facade of his empire, Jonathan harbored a deep and persistent emptiness. Surrounded by sycophants and people who saw him merely as a symbol of wealth and power, he felt increasingly isolated. No matter how many accolades he received or how many business deals he closed, there was an unshakable sense that true connection and genuine happiness had always eluded him. Late one rainy evening, while Jonathan sat alone in his spacious, tastefully decorated office high above the bustling city of Chicago, he found himself staring blankly at a row of crystal glasses on his mahogany desk. The view from his window was magnificent, a panorama of the city's shimmering skyline, but it only deepened his sense of loneliness. Every luxurious possession, every impressive achievement felt hollow in the absence of true human connection. He had become so accustomed to the superficial praise and the flattering words of those who surrounded him that he had long forgotten what it meant to be seen and valued as an individual. That night, as the rain pounded relentlessly on the glass and the city lights blurred into a kaleidoscope of colors, Jonathan's thoughts turned introspective. He began to question: what truly matters when you have everything? Can money, power, and luxury buy you real happiness? These questions echoed in his mind, stirring a longing for authenticity that he had suppressed for years. He realized that he was tired of the pretense, the endless parade of empty compliments, the false smiles, and the obligatory nods that never conveyed genuine care. In his heart, he yearned for a day when he could cast aside his public persona and simply be himself. Determined to uncover the truth about his own existence, Jonathan resolved that he needed to see the world through different eyes. He wanted to experience life as it was lived by those who were not ensnared by wealth and status. Deep within, he suspected that somewhere in the anonymity of everyday life lay a kind of freedom that his gilded world had long denied him. That realization began to kindle a quiet rebellion against the very image he had so carefully cultivated. In the days that followed, Jonathan started planning an audacious experiment. He decided that for a while he would step away from the trappings of his identity as a millionaire and immerse himself in the everyday experiences of an ordinary guest. His own hotel, a towering edifice of modern elegance that he managed with an iron fist, would become his stage for transformation. He resolved to cast aside his tailored suits, expensive watches, and the entourage of bodyguards that always flanked him. Instead, he would don simple clothes, jeans, a worn-in sweater, and use fake identification to ensure that no one recognized him. For the first time in years, he wanted to experience life without the weight of his legacy, to see what it felt like to be just another face in the crowd. As he meticulously prepared for his undercover journey, Jonathan couldn't help but feel a tremor of excitement mixed with trepidation. What would he discover about the people who worked for him? Would he find that the world he had built was as empty as he feared, or was there a hidden richness in the lives of those who toiled behind the scenes? More importantly, could this radical step lead him to a truth about himself, a truth that was buried beneath layers of wealth, privilege, and pretense? That night, as he lay in his luxurious yet increasingly meaningless bed, Jonathan stared at the ceiling and imagined a life where he was free of expectations, where he could simply be human. The thought filled him with both a bitter nostalgia and a hopeful anticipation. He made a silent vow that the next morning he would begin his journey into the unknown. No longer would he allow his identity as a wealthy magnate to shroud his soul. Instead, he would seek the authenticity of life, even if it meant starting from scratch as an ordinary guest in his own hotel. Thus began the first chapter in Jonathan Bennett's quest for true happiness, a quest that would soon challenge everything he thought he knew about wealth, power, and the meaning of a fulfilled life. Jonathan Bennett's transformation from a powerful magnate to an ordinary guest began the very next morning. With his expensive suits replaced by a pair of well-worn jeans and a simple, faded sweater, He stepped into the lobby of his own hotel as if he were any other visitor. In that moment, he felt an unfamiliar lightness. No longer did he bear the weight of his title or the constant scrutiny of sycophantic colleagues. The grand chandelier above and the elegant marble floors still spoke of luxury, but now his focus shifted to the details that had always gone unnoticed amidst the glitter of wealth. As Jonathan moved through the bustling lobby, he observed guests casually chatting, staff hurrying to fulfill orders, and receptionists offering polite yet rehearsed smiles. He noticed the subtle interactions between the employees and the guests, gestures of respect often absent in a place where appearances reigned supreme. Every detail seemed magnified in his newfound anonymity, and for the first time in years he felt like a genuine observer of life rather than its orchestrator. His attention soon landed on one particular staff member. Amid the sea of indistinguishable uniforms, a young woman with warm brown eyes and an unpretentious smile caught his gaze. Her name tag read Allison, and she moved with a quiet determination that belied the exhaustion on her face. Jonathan watched as she deftly balanced trays of breakfast items and greeted every guest with a kindness that was both sincere and understated. There was a certain dignity in the way she handled even the smallest tasks, as though she carried a secret strength born of hard-fought battles in her own life. Throughout the morning, Jonathan found himself continually drawn back to Allison. While others merely passed her by, he took note of every subtle gesture. How she carefully arranged the silverware on a guest table, how she paused to offer a gentle word of encouragement to a co-worker who looked on the verge of tears, and how her eyes occasionally betrayed a deep-seated weariness despite her professional composure. Each observation stirred something within him, a mixture of curiosity and empathy that he had long suppressed beneath layers of corporate coldness. As he wandered the corridors of the hotel, Jonathan began to interact with other employees, asking casual questions that revealed more about their daily struggles. He learned that many of them worked long hours under Determined to uncover the truth about his own existence, Jonathan resolved that he needed to see the world through different eyes. He wanted to experience life as it was lived by those who were not ensnared by wealth and status. Deep within, he suspected that somewhere in the anonymity of everyday life lay a kind of freedom that his gilded world had long denied him. That realization began to kindle a quiet rebellion against the very image he had so carefully cultivated. In the days that followed, Jonathan started planning an audacious experiment. He decided that for a while he would step away from the trappings of his identity as a millionaire and immerse himself in the everyday experiences of an ordinary guest. His own hotel, a towering edifice of modern elegance that he managed with an iron fist, would become his stage for transformation. He resolved to cast aside his tailored suits, expensive watches, and the entourage of bodyguards that always flanked him. Instead, he would don simple clothes, jeans, a worn-in sweater, and use fake identification to ensure that no one recognized him. For the first time in years, he wanted to experience life without the weight of his legacy, to see what it felt like to be just another face in the crowd. As he meticulously prepared for his undercover journey, Jonathan couldn't help but feel a tremor of excitement mixed with trepidation. What would he discover about the people who worked for him? Would he find that the world he had built was as empty as he feared, or was there a hidden richness in the lives of those who toiled behind the scenes? More importantly, could this radical step lead him to a truth about himself, a truth that was buried beneath layers of wealth, privilege, and pretense? That night, as he lay in his luxurious yet increasingly meaningless bed, Jonathan stared at the ceiling and imagined a life where he was free of expectations, where he could simply be human. The thought filled him with both a bitter nostalgia and a hopeful anticipation. He made a silent vow that the next morning he would begin his journey into the unknown. No longer would he allow his identity as a wealthy magnate to shroud his soul. Instead, he would seek the authenticity of life, even if it meant starting from scratch as an ordinary guest in his own hotel. Thus began the first chapter in Jonathan Bennett's quest for true happiness, a quest that would soon challenge everything he thought he knew about wealth, power, and the meaning of a fulfilled life. Jonathan Bennett's days as an undercover guest continued, and with each passing hour he grew increasingly attuned to the real pulse of his own hotel. Wandering through the corridors and communal areas with the careful anonymity he had so longed for, he found himself captivated not by the grand lobby or the polished decor, but by the human stories unfolding around him. Every face, every interaction revealed a truth that his life of luxury had long concealed. In particular, one figure stood out from the rest: Allison, a warm, unassuming receptionist whose tired eyes and gentle smile betrayed a depth of experience and quiet dignity. One brisk morning, Jonathan seated himself at a modest table by a sunlit window in the hotel restaurant. The chatter of guests and clinking of cutlery provided a soft backdrop to his reflective mood. As he absent-mindedly scanned the room, his gaze repeatedly returned to Allison, who moved gracefully between tables. She refilled coffee cups, straightened place settings, and exchanged brief, sincere words with guests and colleagues alike. Her uniform, though plain, was meticulously neat, and a simple name tag on her chest read Allison. There was something about her, a subtle combination of resilience and vulnerability that stirred something long dormant within him. After a few moments, as Jonathan sipped his coffee, she approached with the practiced politeness of a seasoned professional. "Good morning," Allison said softly, her tone warm yet reserved. Jonathan, careful not to reveal his true identity, replied in an equally gentle manner, "Good morning. I was wondering, if you don't mind me asking, how long have you been with the hotel?" Her eyes flickered for a moment, and then she offered a modest smile. "Almost 3 years," she answered, tucking a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "It's not always easy, but I do my best." Their conversation, initially casual, slowly deepened as Jonathan found himself drawn to her honesty. He asked about her daily routine and the challenges she faced working long hours. Allison spoke quietly about the pressures of juggling multiple tasks, about dealing with rude guests and indifferent supervisors, and about the weight of responsibilities she carried without complaint. Jonathan listened intently, his mind racing as he realized how little attention had been paid to the human cost behind the smooth operation of his hotels. Here was a person who, despite being overlooked and underappreciated, maintained her dignity and kindness even in the most trying circumstances. As they talked, Jonathan discreetly probed, asking, "Do you ever feel that your efforts go unnoticed?" Allison's eyes softened and she sighed. "Sometimes," she confessed, "it can feel as if I'm just a shadow in a very large, glittering world. But I do it because I believe every little act of care matters." Her words resonated with Jonathan. They were a stark contrast to the superficial praise he was accustomed to from his affluent circle. In that quiet exchange, he sensed a profound sincerity that had been missing from his life. He marveled at how naturally she spoke about the struggles of everyday people and how her humility shone through despite the hardships. For Jonathan, that conversation was transformative. It wasn't just about learning how others lived. It was about rediscovering the lost art of genuine human connection. He realized that, while his wealth had built an empire, it had also erected barriers that prevented him from truly knowing those who made his success possible. Allison's gentle strength and unpretentious spirit ignited a spark within him, a desire not only to appreciate the lives of his employees, but also to help improve them. Before parting ways, Jonathan mustered the courage to say, "Thank you, Allison. Your words have given me a new perspective today." She paused, her expression earnest yet cautious, and replied simply, "I'm glad I could help, sir." Though she addressed him formally, in that moment her tone hinted at something more personal. As she walked away, Jonathan watched her with a quiet determination. He resolved that he would return tomorrow, not as a wealthy owner, but as a genuine seeker of truth, a man who longed to understand what it truly meant to be part of a community. The conversation left him with a feeling of possibility, a glimmer that the life he had known might be transformed by real human connection. And so, with each thoughtful moment and every whispered exchange, Jonathan's journey toward rediscovering authentic happiness had truly begun. In the following days, Jonathan continued his undercover sojourn at his hotel with a fervor he had never before experienced. Disguised as an ordinary guest, he traversed the halls, sat in on daily routines, and engaged in casual conversations with employees. Every interaction deepened his understanding of the often overlooked world that existed beneath the veneer of luxury. His repeated encounters with Alison became the focal point of his new existence. Her steady resolve, the quiet dignity with which she faced daily adversities, and the genuine compassion that shone in her eyes stirred something deep within him. One afternoon, as the hotel bustled with the rhythms of daily operations, Jonathan found an opportunity to speak with her again. This time he approached her casually in the corridor near the staff break room where she was taking a brief respite. "Alison," he began, his voice gentle and unassuming, "I was wondering, what keeps you going every day? With everything you face, what gives you the strength?" She regarded him with a mixture of surprise and curiosity, her eyes flickering briefly as if weighing the sincerity behind his question. "Honestly," she replied after a pause, "it's the hope that things might change someday. And sometimes it's the little moments, when a guest smiles or when a coworker offers a kind word, that remind me that I'm not invisible. Even when the world seems cold, there's a warmth that I cling to." Her words resonated powerfully with Jonathan. He shared in return, in vague yet heartfelt terms, that sometimes he too felt trapped in a world of superficial interactions and empty gestures, a world where his true self was lost behind a facade of wealth and power. Their conversation meandered from everyday struggles to reflections on what truly mattered in life. Jonathan found himself revealing bits of his own inner turmoil, careful not to divulge his true identity, but enough to convey that he longed for authenticity. Alison, listening intently, expressed her belief that every person deserved to be seen for who they really were, beyond titles or status. Over the next few encounters, their discussions grew more personal. Jonathan discovered that Alison had dreams beyond her current station, a desire for respect, for recognition of the hard work and sacrifices that marked her daily life. She spoke of her modest upbringing and the challenges that had led her to work long hours without complaint. Each word was laced with both resignation and quiet defiance against the system that treated her like a disposable cog. Jonathan felt a stirring of responsibility, a realization that his vast wealth had blinded him to the struggles of those who made his empire function. He vowed, silently, that he would change that, not just for her sake, but for everyone whose voice had been stifled in the corridors of his hotels. The more time Jonathan spent with Alison, the more he understood that what he had been missing in his life was not a grand adventure or the accolades of success, but the honest, unfiltered connections that came from truly caring for others. He began to question the values that his business empire had long stood for and to envision a future where genuine respect and compassion were paramount. Each conversation with Alison chipped away at the hardened exterior he had built around himself, revealing a vulnerable man yearning for purpose and meaning beyond wealth. One evening, as Jonathan walked back to his temporary room after another day spent in the hotel's vibrant yet humdrum life, he paused by a quiet corner of the lobby. The gentle murmur of conversation and the soft glow of ambient lighting filled him with a sense of calm he hadn't felt in years. He looked at the nameplate on a vacant chair and thought of Alison's determined eyes and unyielding spirit. In that moment, he resolved to do more than just observe. He would actively work to improve the lives of those around him, starting with the people in his own hotel. His heart, once encased in the cold armor of corporate success, was slowly thawing under the warmth of authentic human connection. And in that delicate, transformative space between the ordinary and the extraordinary, Jonathan Bennett's true journey was beginning to unfold. In the weeks that followed, Jonathan's experience as an undercover guest became a catalyst for profound change, not only within himself, but also throughout his hotel empire. The insights he had gained from witnessing the daily realities of his employees, particularly the quiet struggles and admirable resilience of Allison, ignited in him an overwhelming desire to make a difference. No longer could he turn a blind eye to the systemic injustices that had long been woven into the fabric of his business. He now saw each instance of disrespect and neglect as a personal failing, a blemish on the legacy he wished to build. Determined to act, Jonathan began implementing sweeping reforms. Under his direct supervision, he reorganized the management structure of his hotels, starting with his own establishment. The first step was to address the long-ignored issues: unfair wages, poor working conditions, and the toxic culture of indifference that had permeated the staff. He personally held meetings with employees, listened to their concerns, and set up anonymous feedback channels to ensure that every voice could be heard. His own transformation, from aloof magnate to compassionate leader, inspired many within the organization, and slowly the atmosphere began to change. Throughout this period, Jonathan's interactions with Allison became more frequent and deeply personal. No longer confined to fleeting greetings or chance encounters, their conversations blossomed into genuine connections. Over cups of coffee in the quieter hours of the morning, Jonathan learned about Allison's hopes, her hardships, and the quiet dignity with which she had endured years of neglect. Allison, in turn, began to see a side of Jonathan that few had ever witnessed: a man who, stripped of his wealth and title, was vulnerable, sincere, and genuinely committed to making things better. Their bond grew steadily, a testament to the power of empathy and the transformative potential of real human connection. As the reforms took effect, the hotel began to transform. The once indifferent management gave way to a culture of respect and genuine care, and the employees, feeling seen and valued, responded with renewed dedication and pride. Jonathan's actions not only improved working conditions, but also enhanced the guest experience. The hotel, once viewed merely as a symbol of opulence, became a vibrant community where people worked together in mutual respect and where the true essence of hospitality, warmth, empathy, and care, was revived. In his personal life, Jonathan found himself increasingly drawn to Allison. Their shared experiences, the honest conversations, and the mutual recognition of each other's worth forged a bond that transcended the superficialities of wealth. For Jonathan, every smile Allison offered, every quiet gesture of kindness, became a revelation, a reminder that true happiness was found not in grand displays of opulence, but in the simple, genuine moments of connection. Slowly, the transformation in his heart began to mirror the changes in his business. He realized that while money could buy comfort, it could never replace the deep, sustaining fulfillment that comes from making a positive impact on the lives of others. One crisp autumn morning, as the hotel's new spirit of community resonated through its corridors, Jonathan found himself standing before the grand entrance, not as a distant owner, but as one of the people, a man with a renewed sense of purpose. The transformation was complete. The once lonely, powerful magnate had rediscovered the essence of life through love, empathy, and a commitment to justice. In that moment, he resolved that he would continue to champion these values in every facet of his life, proving that true wealth lies in the connections we forge and the compassion we extend to others. Jonathan Bennett had finally found his way back to what truly mattered, and his future, now intertwined with the life of the extraordinary Allison, promised a legacy of authenticity, respect, and genuine love.